Hello everyone, Not a Consequence here, back with a new video. This time I'm recounting the St. Patrick's Day themed one-shot I ran for my players this past weekend. As a basis for this adventure, I used a recently released Welcome to the Hellfire Club box set. Right at the end of last year, I started a new campaign with a mix of players from both my long-term game and the Keep on the Borderlands group. I haven't started a video series about their adventures yet because they haven't made enough progress, so be watching for that to launch sometime later this year. However, I wanted to run a St. Patrick's Day one-shot for these characters because they missed out on getting a Christmas event and the subsequent reward items. I was also looking for an excuse to start using the Stranger Things Hellfire Club box set I recently purchased. Because even though it is for 5th edition D&D, it really has an old school feel to it, and I've been thinking about how I can convert it for use with the BX rules. The Hellfire Club set comes with 4 adventures. The first one is called The Vanishing Gnome, and it is for first level characters. Reading through the adventure, the so-called gnome really behaves more like a leprechaun. And then it occurred to me that I could use this adventure for a St. Patrick's Day one-shot. This way I could give the players a holiday event and also start using the Hellfire Club set both at the same time. So first let me introduce the roster of player characters. We have Boris the Dwarf, Dirk the Magic User, Eldrin the Elf, Null the Thief, Rosalind the Fighter, and Theoden the Cleric. There are 6 players in this campaign, so each person is running only one character. Before we started this Hellfire Club adventure, I made duplicates of the characters within Roll20. I told the players that they would be running separate Stranger Things versions of their characters for the 4 adventures included with the box set. I left their ability scores and hit points alone, but I deleted all of their equipment and substituted that with the same equipment that the Hellfire Club pre-gens have. I also told them that any treasure or magic items they find during the 4 Hellfire Club adventures would stay with the Stranger Things versions of their characters. Only upon completion of the final Hellfire Club adventure would we consider bringing that stuff into the, quote, real campaign. However, just as with the Halloween and Christmas events I've run in the past, the St. Patrick's Day reward items the characters get would be for use in the actual campaign. I'll go over those at the end of this video. So here's the illustration which kicks off the adventure. The characters are challenged by a gnome, or in my case a leprechaun, to adventure through a sort of proving grounds dungeon he created, and this is the entrance. And just as implied by the adventure cover, there are actually 2 versions of the dungeon, a right side up version and an upside down version. Now, all of my players are familiar with Stranger Things to one degree or another, so I didn't have to explain the concept of the upside down. But in any case, both versions of the dungeon must be successfully navigated in order to receive a reward, which the leprechaun promises to give the characters. While prepping to run this adventure, I decided to ask ChatGPT to colorize the illustration and also place a leprechaun in front of the entrance, and this was the result. I have to say it did a pretty good job, and this is the illustration which I showed to my players when we got started. So now that you have all the background details, let's get started with the actual adventure. This is the adventure's opening scene. The characters are sealed inside a room with 5 doors. I described them all, and the players decided to start with the door which Boris the Dwarf is standing in front of. The engraving on the door was that of a blacksmith's forge, 3 pointy-eared humanoids working at it. So the characters lined up along the walls and waited to follow the dwarf in. The door opened to reveal a short winding passage, which soon ended at another door pointed out here. Now, just as an aside, let me tell you that all of the passages in this adventure are only 5 feet wide. So many of the screenshots you're going to see will be like this, with the characters all sort of bunched up together, because there's just not that much space to move around. Opening the door, the characters saw a scene just like what was engraved on the outer door, a blacksmith's forge, with 3 goblins hammering away at a piece of metal. And here is the illustration which came with the adventure, and which I had AI colorize. Again, I think it did a pretty good job. The goblins were singing a little song when the characters arrived, and they seemed friendly. So the rest of the party entered the room. The goblins said that the leprechaun had placed them here as potential help for the adventurers, but they requested a favor from the characters first. They said that in a nearby room, the leprechaun had placed 3 evil gnolls, whom they knew were planning to attack the goblins. The goblins said that the characters would go there and defeat the gnolls first, and they would help the characters successfully complete the rest of this adventure. Taking the goblins at their word, the characters returned to the Chamber of Doors and went to the one with the image of a gnoll engraved upon it. The door did not open directly into a room with gnolls. Instead, there was a hallway with multiple doors. Boris, the dwarf, opened the western door, and it led to a room filled with spider webs. Assuming that this was not the room they were looking for, he reclosed it. Then Theoden the cleric opened the door to the north. Inside that room, there were 3 gnolls chanting around an altar with a flail laid upon it. Their chanting was an invocation to Yenogu, the evil god of the gnolls. So the characters charged in and initiated melee with the monsters. The characters rolled poorly at first and began taking a little damage themselves. Finally, Roslan the fighter took out one of the gnolls, and then the tide of the battle began to turn. Roslan even scored a critical hit, although her damage roll was terrible. Finally, Theoden the cleric asked if he could grab the flail from the altar and start using it to attack the gnolls. I said sure, there was nothing to stop anyone from doing that. So he did. It turned out to be a magical +1 flail, and with its help, the characters eventually defeated the gnolls. The characters returned to the goblins, displaying the flail as proof of their victory. The goblins then invited each of the characters to dunk their weapons into the forge. This action coated the weapon with a thin layer of molten metal, which would temporarily grant an additional d6 of damage on a successful attack. Next, the characters opened the door with a spiderweb pattern engraved upon it. As you might expect, it led to the same room, which the characters had previously seen from another door. Dominating the room was a large statue of a warrior, and in front of that was a crystal sculpture of a spider on a low stone pedestal. Boris and Theoden stepped into the room, but were required to make dex checks to avoid the spider webs. They both failed and were stuck. As per the adventure, if a person gets stuck in the webbing, they must make a strength check to break free. Fortunately, both the characters succeeded in their strength check and moved further into the room. Eldrin the elf then began using fire to burn away the webbing blocking the room's entrance. Theoden studied the crystal spider sculpture and saw what looked like a flaming sword embedded inside it. So he used his new magic flail to try smashing the sculpture. He succeeded, but this action brought forth a giant spider hiding among the webs covering the ceiling. It scuttled down to the floor level and immediately attacked the cleric. Fortunately, the characters managed to defeat the spider before anyone was bitten by it. The characters examined the now freed flaming sword, which was of course magical. Everyone agreed that Roslan the fighter was best suited to start using this weapon. Next, the characters approached a door with a minotaur's head engraved upon it. Not unexpectedly, the door opened into a maze. Boris led the way, but only a few steps in, he triggered a spear trap. The adventure allows for a dex check to avoid taking damage from the spears. Boris succeeded, but now the characters were extra cautious. The characters soon found another space with bloodstains on the floor. Theoden dropped his shield on the space and triggered another spear trap. However, now that the characters knew where the trigger spot was, they were able to safely move past this trap too. Suddenly, the characters spied up ahead a demogorgon feeding on the body of a minotaur. This is the illustration which the adventure provided, and which I had AI colorize. Boris and Theoden charged in, while the monster was distracted with its feeding. This allowed them to get a surprise round of attacks. Both characters hit, and the damage caused the creature to retreat further into the maze. Characters inspected a nearby chest and found some gold coins as well as a wand. The wand assists with finding secret doors, and was given to Dirk, the magic user, to carry for now. The characters continued wandering through the maze, attempting to track down the demogorgon. Eventually, they came to a dead end, but in the wall was a portal leading to the Upside Down. The portal looked similar to this one from the TV show. Characters could only assume that the demogorgon had escaped through it to the Upside Down. They began stepping through the portal, and sure enough, found themselves in an upside-down version of the maze. Unlike the previous dungeon, which was well lit, this place was completely dark, and even torchlight gave off only a dim glow. Suddenly, a myconid came stumbling out of the darkness, obviously intending to attack Rosalind. Fortunately, mushrooms do not have a very good armor class, and using her new flame sword, she quickly defeated the creature. Nearby, the characters found another small chest, similar to the one next to the dead Minotaur, in the right side up maze. Everyone gathered around it, with Dirk the magic user unwisely putting himself at the outer edge of the party. What he did not yet know was that another myconid was lurking in the darkness at the spot pointed out here. The mushroom man lunged out of the darkness and pummeled Dirk into the negative hit point range with a single attack. Theoden the cleric pulled Dirk out of the way, while Rosalind stepped up to deal with this myconid as well. Theoden cast Cure Light Wounds on Dirk, while Rosalind and Eldrin cut down the myconid. Now the characters began wandering the maze, looking for a way out. Rosalind was leading the way and made some lucky guesses as at which turns to make. Soon the characters arrived at the upside-down version of the Chamber of Doors. Once inside, they immediately noticed a small body lying in the room's corner. Characters approached and saw that the body was that of a shriveled-up dwarf. Clutched in its hand was a bloody note, warning anyone who finds him to immediately flee. Suddenly, the form of a shadow rose from the dwarf's body and tried to attack the party. But with this many characters surrounding it, the shadow was quickly defeated. Understanding the nature of the Upside Down, the characters decided to go to the door corresponding to the Goblin Forge in the right side up dungeon. And just like in that dungeon, there was a short corridor leading to another door. Entering the room, the characters discovered another blacksmith's forge, but this one looked nothing like the Goblin Forge in the right side up. Here is a colorized illustration of the forge, which is provided with the adventure. Suddenly, the Demogorgon sprang from behind the forge and leapt up on top of it. The final battle was about to begin. The Demogorgon won the first round of initiative. It jumped down from the forge and attacked Rosalind, immediately knocking her into the negative hit point range. Other characters circled around the forge to get at the Demogorgon from behind. With Rosalind down, Theoden the cleric stepped up to take her place. The character scored some hits on the monster, but it was still in the fight. It next attacked Theoden and wounded him, but luckily did not take him down. Next combat round, the Demogorgon spun around and attacked Eldrin. Luckily, none of its attack rolls succeeded. Dark the magic user ran over and bandaged Rosalind, preventing her from bleeding out and dying. Theoden the cleric made a successful attack roll and then proceeded to roll the maximum possible damage. This was enough to push the Demogorgon over the edge, killing it. As soon as the Demogorgon was dead, the leprechaun suddenly reappeared, congratulating the characters on successfully completing his challenge dungeon. As a reward, he granted the characters another magic item, which works similar to a ring of invisibility. He then transferred the characters back outside the dungeon. As I mentioned at the start of this video, all magic items found within this adventure would stay with the Stranger Things versions of the characters. However, they now got to randomly roll for St. Patrick's Day themed rewards, which would transfer to their characters in the live campaign. What follows now is a summary of all possible options, so you can use them in your own campaign if you like. So first is the Rainbow Slide, an item that I used the one last time I did a St. Patrick's Day event a few years ago. As you can see, it's a small charm that turns into a rainbow. It's essentially a teleportation device. For all these, you can pause and fully read the description if you like. Next is the Shamrock Shake, and it's like a max healing potion. It's exactly the same as the Christmas-themed eggnog of healing. Next is the Shamrock of Protection, a 4-leaf clover. Eating each one of the leaves will add a +1 bonus to your armor class. The next item is new for this year, a Leprechaun Pipe. And again, you can pause and read if you like, but it surrounds the user and everyone next to that person with a cloud of smoke. And as long as everyone remains within the smoke, they get some good combat bonuses. Next is another new item, the Ring of 4-Leaf Clover. You can read the description. Each petal of the clover invokes a different power when you break it off the ring. And then finally is the Leprechaun Lemonade, the idea of which I got seeing an ad. This one, if you drink the cup of lemonade, the user can pick one of two powers, either invisibility or disguise. And again, you can pause and read the details if you like. All right, well, that's all I have for now. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. If you can, please leave a comment and let me know what you think. If you have not yet, please subscribe to the channel. If you know of a good place, please share the video. And anything you do to help support the channel, I appreciate it. Thanks again. Bye for now.